They've said a lot of things about Toni Harris. They said she was too small. They said she was too slow, too weak. They said she'd never get to the next level, never inspire a new generation, never get a football scholarship. Yeah, people have made a lot of assumptions about Toni.
But I've never been a big fan of assumptions.
I gotta say, I'm inspired now. Not only am I ready to buy a Toyota RAV4 because it's not too small, not too slow, and not too weak for me, but I also think I'm ready to become a professional football player.
My dream moving forward is to become the first female NFL player.
Okay, I'm with you. Toyota showed her doing some workouts, so let's see where her squat's at. Oh, oops, it looks like they zoomed in to the point where you can't see how much she's lifting. I'm sure that was an accident. What about her bench press? Also zoomed in too much to see what kind of plates are there. Curious though, when she's doing the battle ropes or flipping the tire, which are exercises that are much harder to easily quantify, they're fully zoomed out. That must be a coincidence, but I'm sure she can lift on the level of a professional football player. Now, for those of you who don't know, that clip from the Toyota commercial that I used was actually aired as a Super Bowl commercial back in 2019. It hit levels of modern feminism that at that point, even I couldn't believe. Not only is it not possible for a female to be competitive with high-level male athletes because of a thing called sexual dimorphism, but with a sport like football, it's actually incredibly dangerous. Yet despite the fact that everyone knows that, mainstream media and a big car company are willing to push her into something that's bad for her just to get sales and just to get publicity. I mean, look how ridiculous they are being.
A gazillion eyeballs, Toni, will be on TVs around the country this Sunday. Like, you will become a household name.
It's been almost 4 years, and no one knows who she is. Even though I've seen the commercial already, I actually had to look her up for this video because I forgot her name. Maybe there's a reason for that. Much like the infamous League of Legends team, Team Siren, she is nowhere near competitive at a professional level. Just a little refresher, Team Siren was an all-female esports team that was paraded around as top tier, but when you looked at their actual stats, they were barely above average players. And as you can see now, just a few years later, media is doing the same thing with Toni Harris. I actually was able to find a video that didn't zoom in the camera on all her lifts, so let's look at her stats. Well, it's still kind of zoomed in, but she's yelling to finish a squat that has one plate on the bar? She's struggling to do a squat of 135 pounds? Here's another picture from that same video of her loading up the bar for what looks like a squat. We can see that one of the weights is 5 pounds, which means the bigger one is probably 10 pounds, and the smaller one is probably 2.5 pounds. That's an 80-pound squat. Even if I'm being super generous and assuming that 5-pound weight is actually 5 kilograms, that's a squat of 120 pounds, which is a joke if she thinks she can be competitive in professional football with a beginner-level squat. Here she is doing a shoulder press. I'm going to say that looks like a 25-pound plate. Assuming it's 25 pounds, that's a 95-pound shoulder press, which again is beginner level. Last, here she is doing a seated dip. I don't use machines, so I don't know how much on average those plates weigh, but I can't imagine they're much more than 40 pounds. Wow, no wonder they zoomed in on the Toyota commercial when they showed her lifts. Anyone who weight trains can tell that she is not strong enough to compete with professional male athletes. Now, I did randomly catch her in one of the news clips doing a back squat of what looks like 245 pounds, but she is really struggling here and her form is terrible. You can see her knees caving in, and this clearly is too much weight for her. Now, for a female, a 245-pound squat is incredible. For a professional NFL player who on average weighs 245 pounds, this is bare minimum. If you want a decent squat, you should at least be able to squat your body weight, if not significantly more. Here's a chart from T Nation for what athletic people consider good lifts for men and women. Just for emphasis, again, this chart is for athletes, so if you're a normal or a beginning lifter and your back squat is like 125, it's not the end of the world. Just keep working. But Toni's lifts are nowhere near the male side of this chart.
I am strong, I am fast, and I am not weak.
It's one thing to say that, but you're making statements that are actually quantifiable. If you're going to say you're strong, then what's your deadlift? If you're going to say you're fast, then what's your 40-yard dash? If you're going to say that you aren't weaker than the male players, then how do your stats compare to theirs?
Being a role model, it's an honor, but it's also a privilege because not every day everybody can stand up and be a role model for other people. I mean, I'm just paving the way for the next little girl that's going to come along and be a role model as well.
It's actually kind of arrogant to call yourself a role model. But how can we call this person a role model if she isn't even transparent about her ability? She didn't openly say what she could do. I had to go and do investigative journalism to find out what her lifts were, and I still don't know how fast she is. Well, we know why they aren't transparent in the commercials and in the newsfeed. It's because if we had those stats side by side with a professional NFL player, nobody in their right mind would say that Toni Harris is competitive on that level. It's shocking how many people the media has gaslit into not knowing simple biology.
I think women are just as strong as men. I don't
Physically?
Yeah, I do.
And the reality is that not only is the media promoting a narrative that is obviously false, but in the process of doing that, they are pretty severely harming the lives of the people involved by pushing them to engage with a delusion.
I had a coach tell me before that I would never get to the next level because I was a lot smaller and not as fast as the other guy. So that moment kind of, taught me to never give up. From that moment then, I told myself, no one's ever going to decide what I'm going to do with my life. That's my decision.
Isn't that amazing when we have these you can't moments? I remember being in college and
course,
journalism
yeah.
professor wrote on my exam, like, you will never make it in journalism.
Wow.
I was like, oh, really? Well, watch this.
And you proved them wrong.
Yeah, but you don't get to say, they said I would never walk again, unless you're actually walking. Notice how the air quote journalist lady is already in the field they said she wouldn't do. So you haven't disproven anything, because the reality of this situation is that the reason she isn't a household name is because she quit like a year after all this promotion. She goes over why in a video called, Why I Didn't Finish My Senior Year of Football in College.
So as the season goes by, I still don't get to play. I still don't get to go to meetings. I'm thinking about how I was constantly asking my coaches, am I doing something wrong? I'm constantly asking my coaches, well, why can't I attend the meetings? I'm constantly asking my coaches, well, am I going to be able to play in a game or am I going to be able to practice? And I was getting no answers. The only thing I was hearing is, oh, this media such and such wants to talk to you, and this media such and such wants to talk to you, and these people want to do it. And I was just so freaking tired of hearing that.
After she got signed for a college scholarship, the coaches basically wouldn't let her play. Probably because they looked at her stats and said, at best this player is not competitive, at worst she gets severely hurt. The final straw for Toni was this moment here.
And I just asked my head coach, we talked for a second, and I asked him, Coach, are you going to allow me to come back and compete? That's all I wanted to know. If his answer would have been yes, we're going to help make sure you come out here and compete, I would have went back. I would have. But his answer was, I don't know. To me, I don't know was not only a slap in the face, but it was a no.
That answer is basically a no without him saying no. The reality is that the school she went to just got a new female athletic director who was the first female athletic director at that school.
I ended up confiding in my athletic director, who was the first female to be the athletic director at Central Methodist University.
As a groundbreaking, strong, and independent woman, I'm sure this new athletic director wanted some good press in the name of diversity, so she gets the school to offer a scholarship to a female player, not because Toni was actually competitive. And of course, Toni accepts because
I believe the future is female.
That's a sexist statement, by the way, but the rest is history. And the sick thing is that everyone in the room during these media events knows the reality of the situation, but not only are they not saying anything, they are actively pushing her towards a path of self-destruction. What if she does get into the NFL? She plays a defensive position, and at 165 pounds, there are people who literally weigh around 100 pounds more than her on the other side of the field. Imagine if she goes up against one of those guys and because of the strength disparity, gets put in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Imagine the guilt that the player who hurt her would feel after having done that because some idiot let a girl who is half his size onto the field. This is not a fake action movie where the girls are just as strong as the boys. This is a liability, and everyone knows it. These people are not your friends. The media does this all the time. They're like Lucifer from Paradise Lost. If you don't know the story, Lucifer is mad that he can't destroy God, so he does the next best thing. He finds God's creation, Adam and Eve, and corrupts them by pretending he is their friend while recommending them something that will lead to their pain and suffering in the hopes that it destroys them. That is exactly what the mainstream media does with all these progressive movements. They're promoting this stuff to corrupt people. They did it with sexual promiscuity through feminism and told women to sacrifice their families for their careers. Now we get articles of regret like this. They do it through fat acceptance when they tell morbidly obese people that they are healthy, while at the same time those people are 3 years away from a heart attack. They did it with the BLM riots when they called rioters fighters for democracy. Meanwhile, many of those rioters went to jail, destroyed their towns, or even died. They don't care about you. You are just a means to an end. People who are evil and don't care about you will pretend to be your friend while at the same time recommending your demise. At least Toni eventually realized that.
You're basically already making me out to be what the media has already told me to be. I'm a publicity stunt, a PR stunt. And that's what truly made my depression set in. Like, I didn't want to do the media if I wasn't playing football.
That's the most mature thing I've heard her say, and she did end up moving on. But in that process, wasted years of her life on something when she could have been working on a dream that would actually work out. Then the more disgusting thing here is that the media essentially took advantage of an abuse victim. In this video here, she talks about her childhood and says she was physically and sexually abused by her family of origin to the extent that she was removed from the home and put in multiple foster care homes where, unfortunately, the same thing happened there too. That kind of thing actually happens a lot with foster care. It's a really messed up system. Oftentimes, the kids get moved from one abusive household and end up in another. She also got ovarian cancer at 18. Toni has lived a really harsh life, and the combination of the media gaslighting her into believing that she could be in the NFL, mixed in with not being allowed to play college ball and, by the way, skipping out on other job opportunities so she could play football, led her to severe depression. Fortunately, she switched paths before she got hurt. But it's amazing how effectively the media is able to gaslight people into believing total lies about basic biology. And for this gaslighting to work, it is essential that they instill these messages into kids before they are old enough to know anything, which is why you'll often see propaganda on children's TV like Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network, or teen shows that are owned by the people who own Nickelodeon, like Degrassi. Degrassi was a popular high school drama that ran from 2001 to 2015. You might recognize it as the show that Drake got his start from. Now, Degrassi started out as a pretty innocuous teen show with a very slight liberal political slant, but later went full-blown woke after most of the original cast aged out of the show. It became less about telling stories and more about promoting radical leftist political agendas. Well, it was kind of always like that, but they went really hard on it in the later seasons. But even in the middle of the show's lifespan, they were talking about Foucault and Marx.
Picking university courses. Must be nice.
Don't get too excited. Foucault and postmodernist Marxist theory. What does that even mean?
Well, it is college, so maybe they're just talking about Marxism to be true to life. Though I always remember Foucault as that disgusting creep who did some weird stuff around the age of consent laws in France. That's something worth looking up. I wonder how many people who follow postmodern ideas know that. I also wonder how many people know what kind of person Marx was, because that certainly is an interesting story. But you might ask, where would someone get the idea that women can play professional sports at the level of men? How about from an episode of Degrassi?
It was awesome. Thanks for coming to my tryout, guys.
Like I'd miss the chance to watch you kick some butt.
Come on, let's move!
Yes! That's my girlfriend.
Obviously, I chose our weak link for this little drill.
Actually, Derek runs one of our fastest 40s, and she beat him by like 2 meters.
It's nice that in a fantasy situation where they can just make stuff up, they actually talk about her stats. But by high school, the disparity in athletic ability is huge. It's so huge that a high school boys soccer team beat a professional women's soccer team in an exhibition match. So in no way do I believe that this character Jane is one of the fastest sprinters on the team.
You ready for a new star wide receiver?
Because you beat Derek at a passing drill? A trained ape can do that. In real football, there's tackling. There's no way to let you play. Get hurt.
Yes, what I don't like about all this woke stuff is that it only works if everything goes perfectly. No one ever asks, what if something goes wrong? And if you pay close attention to the episode, something that you'll notice is that only the villains bring up the obvious concerns for a female player in a sport where people are crashing into each other. That's done on purpose. TV studios do things like that all the time. It's actually one of the ways you can tell if someone's about to die or get beat up in a movie. The movie will portray the person in question as an asshole, which makes it okay to enact violence on them. Like that messed up scene in Captain Marvel where the guy tries to hit on her, so she breaks his arm and steals his motorcycle. Now that's kind of an extreme example of the trope, and a very tone-deaf copy of Terminator 2, but you get what I mean. And Degrassi is certainly not above propaganda techniques to sell a false narrative. The show did it all the time. Here's an example of breaking gender stereotypes that the show does at the end of season 8, which is the same season as the football episode. A few of the characters are going on a trip to Los Angeles, and their bus breaks down. A female character who has no backstory to explain these scenes just knows how to fix it.
Oh, nice.
Looks like a compression problem.
What are you doing?
An old trick that my mom taught me. Our car was always breaking down.
Should last until the next town. Okay, try now.
Mia, fix the bus!
The thing that is especially dumb about these two scenes, which by the way are separate occasions, is that this guy next to her in the first one is a professional mechanic. For multiple seasons of the show, this girl is a model who slept her way into the industry, a star cheerleader, and a single mom. There is no way in hell she has ever had time to learn how to fix cars or knows enough to outclass someone who has been a mechanic for several years. Yet, just like the football thing, they put something into the show that is completely unrealistic because it fits the narrative. Getting back to the football episode, the next thing that happens is this.
And you're not doing this just to meet boys?
No.
Well, the board says I can't exclude you from playing, so grab equipment from one of the guys and show up to practice.
I will not let you down, Coach.
Oh, and one more thing. If you're on the boys' team, that makes you one of the boys. No special treatment, understood?
Yeah.
As I was watching this episode, I was thinking that I should set a timer to see how long it takes her to ask for special treatment because it never fails. After this scene with the coach/principal, Jane goes to put on her pads and realizes that some of them are missing. She then goes to the guys to get the rest of her equipment, and they start hazing her, which, by the way, men do to each other all the time, especially in sports. So Jane goes to the boys' locker room to get the rest of her pads. The guys start throwing menstrual pads at her, and to my complete surprise, she actually handles this decently.
For those heavy flow days. There's gonna be some blood loss out there.
Fortunately, this is all the padding I'll need against you wimps.
Don't worry, she screws it up later. But yes, credit where credit is due. Like I said with the esports stuff in a different video, this is how you handle a situation when you're around men. You either play along with a joke or come up with a better insult. Not cry to an authority figure because you can't handle your own issues. You can even see in the scene that when she handles this properly, she gets respect from the other guys who aren't the main bully. Alright, let's go back to the show turning Jane into a victim instead of a character who inspires people with greatness. When we get to her first game, the coach announces all the players and they get cheers, but when it comes to Jane, people don't cheer for her.
At wide receiver, Jane Vaughn!
Yeah, Jay! Yep! What the? Yeah, babe!
Even the cheerleaders aren't into it, except the good girl from that episode where she magically knows how to fix a bus. Then this happens. Oh my god, she was assaulted! Did you see how the camera zoomed in on that moment to let you know what a creep that guy was? Except, wait, this is something that guys do in sports all the time. Now I have no idea why they do this in male sports. If it were me, I'm not slapping some other guy's ass. But look, like 30 seconds before this part happens, they show a male player getting his butt slapped, but there's no emphasis on that. In fact, I had to watch this scene several times before I even noticed that, whereas I noticed the emphasized moment immediately. I thought she was supposed to be treated like one of the boys. So why does her character get special framing in a sob story when they're treating her exactly like they would treat the other players? Fast forwarding a bit, they play the game, and Jane blows it by fumbling the ball after being tackled. I'm not a big football guy, but apparently Derek, the bully of the episode, was supposed to stop the other guy from tackling her, so it's kind of both their faults. However, Jane gets blamed for the loss, and the guys make some t-shirts showing that, which again is how men treat each other. In my life, I once missed a couple of kills in an Apex Legends match, so my teammates drew a picture of two guys carrying a couch with a person on top of it. I was labeled as the person on top of the couch, and my teammates were labeled as the ones carrying the couch, which essentially is saying that I was no help and they carried the match. Welcome to male spaces. Instead of getting offended, I thought the comment against me was pretty funny. That is literally the same type of treatment that Jane got, except when it happens to her character, instead of being impressed that a bunch of kids were able to print custom t-shirts in like a day, she tattles to the staff.
Now listen up. Come on, listen up. Here we go.
The guys were these all day.
Well, listen, I gave them a stern warning. They were just dealing with the loss, right?
Yeah, Shep, what about the female half of the student body? Can't be condoned, all right?
Whoa, cowboy. Okay, I'll handle it.
I mean, right there, instantly that is a great way to make everyone on the team hate you. The correct answer is to roll your eyes, ignore it, and show them up next time with improved play. I'm not going to show this next part because it contains violence and, you know, YouTube and such, but if you want to see it, it's episode 3 of season 8. Anyway, the coach makes everyone do down-ups after Jane tattles, it makes the bully of this episode mad, and it causes a fight where Jane gets pushed into some lockers and gets kicked on the ground. Two things here. One, this is the only time in the episode where a line is crossed. Beating someone up is not hazing, that's abuse. Second, notice how the only ones who bring up reasonable questions are the villains. There isn't a character on the show who is displayed as a good guy that says, "Hey Jane, I'm worried about your safety. Maybe this isn't a good idea." Derek is the one who brought up the safety issue, and since he was labeled as a violent misogynist, his opinion doesn't matter. It's a really backhanded tactic to try to disprove someone's argument when the facts aren't on your side. And since Degrassi goes full-on woke later in the show, I'm apt to believe that tactic was used on purpose to gaslight people about how dangerous it is to integrate women into men's football. After this scene, Jane goes to quit, but is stopped by two girls who now look up to her.
It was so awesome in that game how you made that reception.
We're getting some girls together to make some posters for the next game.
There might not be a next game. I'm going to quit.
But you can't quit.
You're our hero.
Here's the funny thing, though, and I think it heavily applies to the bigger narrative. These two characters, Allie and Claire, know nothing about football and aren't the audience for the sports. They even display that by having Jane's boyfriend, Spinner, explain the game to them.
What's a fullback?
She blocks and sometimes carries the ball.
The ironic part about this episode and all the woke stuff is that they are doing it to cater to an audience that doesn't even care about the game. These girls don't watch football. It's just like how this stuff collapsed the comic book industry. Marvel and DC went all woke and started doing a bunch of crappy remakes of everything to promote the message and cater to people who don't even read comics, and all it did was break everything down and lose people money. Now Japanese manga way outsells comics because Japan did the right thing and told the complainers who don't actually consume their products to shut up. Oh, and don't forget all the comic book store owners who lost their businesses because people don't buy woke comics. Thanks for ruining small businesses so you could promote your political agenda. Not producing products that your audience wants is a great way to destroy your brand. Or worse, a single person or like no more than 5 people will complain that someone they don't like is attending a convention. That person will get canceled, and the experience is ruined for all the fans who actually paid to go to that event. I think voice actor Vic Mignogna made a great point about this issue here.
And what I said for the narration was, look at all these people. Who's going to stand up for them?
Right.
I mean, instead of standing up for the 5 or 10 people that get on your Facebook page and, and cause trouble and try to bully, who's going to stand up for all of these good paying attendees who want to come out and see this guest? I want so badly to politely, kindly, courteously appeal to convention organizers, people that I've known and worked with for years, to take a stand for their paying attendees instead of bending over for a handful of malcontents on the internet,
Exactly. Who's going to speak up for the fans? All these complainers do is just ruin it for everyone. And it's really scary how small of a group of complainers it takes to get something canceled or get someone fired, particularly when that small group's opinion is not in line with the opinions of the vast majority. That's what I mean when I say these people do not care about you. They don't even care about the people they are pretending to help. Do you think those newscasters care at all about Toni Harris when she becomes severely depressed because she's put a lot of work into a goal that she can never achieve because of her body's limitations? Do you think they would care if she became permanently injured from it? No, because they already got their ratings, they already got their publicity, and they already got their ad sales. If they actually cared, then they would have sat her down and told her that she was engaging in self-destructive behavior. That's how you know who your real friends are. When you're going in a bad direction, good friends don't blow smoke up your ass and tell you to keep going. They do the uncomfortable thing, have a talk with you, and try to help you move in a better direction. And you do the same for them. But the important thing here is to pay attention to this kind of stuff in the media so you aren't so easily influenced. Because the reality for everyone is that if you tell a story the right way, you can get a sizable number of people to believe incredibly stupid things, especially if they're young, and then you can radicalize them. However, if you learn to spot the techniques used and learn to ask simple questions, that kind of stuff won't work on you, and you can teach that to other people. Anyway, thanks for watching, follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you in the next video.